On Monday, I started off by looking at by having a production meeting um, all together, and um, not much was discussed, just updating where everybody was and reminding us, our DSM reminding us of our deadline on Friday, which is to have all of the makes for the show finished, which I think so far as I'm going I will meet, but new things might come up and adjustments may need to happen when we look at the fitting, which was another thing that came up in the meeting. Was we need to find a time um, in this week to have the cast down to try on all of their costumes. So I looked through their schedule, the and when they were rehearsing and when they would have time to come down. And the time I found that was closest was Wednesday. So then I went down to the costume room with Joe to help sort out the costumes ready for the fitting. So it was labeling whose costume is whose and figuring out and assigning pieces, especially to the ensemble. Some of the main cast were done already, some were waiting on things to have been ordered or bought, so we were adding them into those places. Like for Holly, for example, she had a skirt that had arrived a couple of days ago that needed putting with the rest of her stuff ready for the fitting, so we can just hand it to them and go. That's why we organise it before, because we don't want to be rushing around trying to get everything ready whilst they're there, because we won't have as much time with them um, as we'd like, and they'd just be waiting around while we were doing that. So it's good to get as much ready before we do it as possible, as that will help when it actually comes to do it, because it'll probably be quite hectic anyway. Um, the main problems we're thinking about getting a nice even mix of colours in the ensemble, and also finding clothes the right size, or what we think would be the right size, ready for them to try on Wednesday. So one thing we looked at for the core dancers was having a mix of red, white and navy blue in all of their costumes, because we want them to have a theme, have them to be able to notice that they're one unit. So that was the red, white, and navy. So we had a lot of like tank tops and sort of cardigans, some red, some stripy, and then we were looking at them and deciding what colours were missing as to what underlay they'd have. We also looked at what they'd wear underneath on their legs. Um, and Joe found some jeans that we can cut down into shorts, which we will do on in the fitting, just to check that they're the right length for cutting all of them. Something I did today, which is Tuesday, was to cut one pair of shorts at around the place we think will work for ready, so they can try that on. We can see if that's a good length for that member of the cast. To cut them off, I put them on Emma to see where they'd sit on a human before cutting them, and I started pinning them, but I didn't actually manage to hem them with the time that I had today. So that will be something that I will aim to finish tomorrow morning before the fitting. Something else I did today was sew the Scout Cub badges onto Francis's sweater, his cardigan for the Star Wars cast, I think it is. I haven't done the one for the second cast yet, because I want to see if his jumper fits before I sew anything on, because I've already tried the cardigan on for that member of the cast, but I haven't for the other one. So I was okay to sew them on. I was hand sewing them because most of the badges are circles. Sewing them with the machine wouldn't really work, and also I want to be able to take them off afterwards quite easily, because I have borrowed them and the scout leader wants them back. So I just need to make sure that I don't use the machine on them because that'll be a lot harder to take off, and also it will give us the jumper back afterwards. Something else I looked at was making the badges for the security guard, which was a new addition that I found from a rehearsal report. Was that they're adding a security guard who needs a uniform. So I I traced the word security in a nice font, and I cut that out and stuck that on a piece of mount board. And on the back of the mount board, I put a badge back with hot glue so it will stick nicely, so that could just be pinned onto the uniform. And I did the same with the Arch Systems logo. I printed that out and cut it to fit a piece of mount board and did the same process, so we can just put that on the costumes for the people who work at Arch Systems in Loserville.